Hey everybody, welcome back to the Behaviour Revolution Scriptures. We're in our last episode of season 4 today. It's amazing. The Israelites are about to cross over to the land of Israel and the land of Canaan, I should say, and over to Jericho. And we're going to have adventures with Joshua. But before that happens, Moses has some important things that he wants to tell the people first. And we're going to go into that next season, but today I want to tie up a few loose ends. Firstly, end of last episode we were talking about the end of times. We were talking about the 2 resurrections and the treasure, the gold of Ophir and the book of remembrance. How the book of remembrance and the book of life are the same thing, I think, because who else does Yahushua want? If you don't choose him, he won't choose you. Reject him and he'll reject you. So in that vein, you know, we were talking about treasure, remember? Treasure can either mean life or death. And another really interesting word came out of all this, and I want to go into it. Before we go back into the text, I want to talk about paralyzed while we're still in this end of days type mode. Paralyzed. Let's look at the word paralyzed. What does paralyzed mean? Remember we dealt with scriptures in our last episode about when the fire comes, they'll be stunned, their arms will fall limp, paralyzed, they'll be looking at each other aghast with their faces aflame, all that sort of thing. What does paralyzed mean? Paralyzed is to make someone unable to think or act normally. Make someone unable to think or act normally, especially through panic or fear. Some people are paralyzed by the thought of failure. So if that's the definition of paralyzed, we don't have to wait until the fire comes for that to happen, do we? And look at the people around us. Paralyzed is to make someone unable to think or act normally. Who do you know around you that acts or thinks normally? Normally being what scripture says, what Yahushua says, that's the norm. Who else around you behaves like this, you know? Does that mean the whole world is in the form of paralysis? Interesting. It may not be physical, full-blown physical paralysis, although some are. But, you know, what's going on? So that's the word paralysis. What does scripture say about paralysis? Paralyzed. In Isaiah 44, don't be paralyzed with fear or be afraid. Haven't I allowed you to hear and declare all this as my witnesses? Is there any other Elohim besides me? There's no other rock that I know of. This is Isaiah talking. What's going on? You know? Haven't I allowed you to hear and declare all this as my witnesses? Is there any other Elohim besides me? Why would you be paralyzed with fear or be afraid? This is the wonderful thing about going through, even just from the beginning, through the foundational books of Moses. You just don't have any fear, you just feel so reassured and things don't faze you as much as they used to, because you realize you're comparing everything that you see in the world to what you're looking at and understanding through the portal from Yahushua, and it's all mad. And in today's video we can see it through the eyes of paralysis. Everybody's mad and they're paralyzed with fear. Look how they're all going with this corona thing, all kept up in their homes, hating each other, you know, freaked out at what's going to happen in the world. In 1 Kings 18 it says, and Elijah came to all the people saying, how long will you stay paralyzed, jumping between 2 opinions? If Yahuwah is Elohim, then follow him. But if Baal is Elohim, then follow him. Just make up your minds. Make up your minds. If Yahuwah is the Elohim, then follow him. If you think Baal's the Elohim, then bloody follow him. Stop jumping between 2 camps all the time. Tossed and turned and, you know, pick a camp and stick to it. Don't be paralyzed. In Habakkuk 1, so Yahuwah's instruction ceases and obedience never goes forth. For the obedient are hemmed in by the wrong, so that the behavior comes out all twisted. The obedient are hemmed in by the wrong, so that all the behavior comes out twisted. It's a big mishmash and mixture. You know, we certainly We are certainly living in the time where the obedient are hemmed in by the wrong, so that the behaviour is coming out all twisted, aren't we? The obedient are hemmed in by the wrong. You've got to be so careful if you're going to open your mouth these days. We are hemmed in, cornered, boxed in by unbelief and disobedience all around us, wickedness, evil. Everybody looking, and if they know, even if they have a hint of an idea that you believe in something higher than anything, so you've got to be really careful before opening your mouth these days. We are hemmed in by the wrong, so that the behaviour is coming out all twisted. What do we see in the world? What do we see in all the religious movements? What do we see on Facebook? Messianics and Nazarene. What's with the behaviour? It's all twisted. It's neither here nor there. People can't work out how they're supposed to behave. People are paralysed. People are paralysed in their own fears and cannot speak out the deliverance of truth, all because they haven't made up their minds. Make up your mind and stand on it. And if you keep reading and you find that you had a few errors here or there, or like last episode, a few errors there, you just set the record straight. If you've written books and done stuff, then reprint them. I don't know, whatever. Just don't be paralysed. Speak the truth. In the book of Acts, chapter 8, the only deliverance can be found in the rock, Yahushua. Look what he is and does for those who want him and his word. Look what he does. For unclean spirits came out of many who were possessed, screaming with a loud voice, and many who were paralysed and lame were healed. That's the power Yahushua has. Many who were lame and paralysed were healed. Yahushua still works like this. Yahushua still works the same way today. If you turn to him, he will unparalyze your fears and deliver you from all sorts of strongholds. After you repent of your ways, you will be freed from your paralytic fears. You will be freed from your paralytic fears. That's a big thing in the world today, like I was saying. The fear. People are so afraid. They try and rest easy and make sure they can sleep at night through all different forms of insurances and accounts that they put money in for rainy days and things like that, to try and make things easier for them. If something goes wrong, they'll be okay, because they're so governed and controlled by fear. But they're still afraid, because money and insurance can't affect your health, can they? They can't affect what happens globally, can they? So people are so controlled by fear. What can Yahushua do with fear? Just push it out of the way. Yahushua gave his bride Yisrael specific instructions before they entered the promised land, to make sure they would never be trapped, make sure they would never be hemmed in or intermixed with the surrounding pagan nations, which would render them paralysed, cursed, and away from the portal of his love. That's why these instructions are so important, because if you step out of these instructions and become like the nations, wrapped up in pagan idolatry, then you will become paralysed, cursed, and away from the portal of his love. So that's why he gives us the instructions, not to be harsh, but to say, if you want to stay in my love, obey me, do what I say. It's for your benefit. He told Israel to drive them all out, smash down all their altars, and never allow that kind of behaviour to permeate into their worship of him. But today, the bride has the same instruction, to be set apart and not let the wickedness of this world, which has already been in us since birth, not let it paralyze our belief, quenching the spirit within us, inviting disobedience into our vessels, and making our love grow cold. We must fight to stay clean and soft. We must fight to stay clean and soft. Yeah. So that was amazing, going into that word paralysed, because that's everybody. We've been like that too. If we're afraid of something, if we don't want to be obedient, if we don't want to put something off, if we are paralysed by something. That's why his word cleanses us. That's why when he gives us something to do, we do it. Our obedience year after year, day after day, cleanses us, you know. So that was amazing. Let's go and finish these last couple of pages of Numbers, which is all still about the land. And right now it's about the boundaries of the land, which I am going to go through fast because, as you can see on the picture, you can see there pretty much what the boundaries are. But these are the words. Yahushua said to Moses, "Give the instructions to the Israelites. When you come into the land of Canaan, which I'm giving you as your special possession, these will be the boundaries. The southern portion of your country will extend from the wilderness of Zin along the edge of Edom. The southern boundary will begin on the east of the Dead Sea. It will then run south past Scorpion Pass in the direction of Zin. Its southernmost point will be Kadesh Barnea, from which it will go to Ⅎ𝗓𝗓 and on to Asmon. From Asmon, the boundary will turn toward the brook of Egypt and end at the Mediterranean Sea. Your western boundary will be the coastline of the Mediterranean Sea. Your northern boundary will begin at the Mediterranean Sea and run east to Mount Hor, then to Lebo-Hamath, and on to Zedad, Zimron, and Hazar-Enan. This will be your northern boundary. The eastern boundary will start at Hazar-Enan and run south to Shechem, then down to Riblah on the east side of Ain. From there, the boundary will run down along the eastern edge of the Sea of Galilee and then along the Jordan River to the Dead Sea. These are the boundaries of your land." And if that was all just gibberish to you, that's why we have a picture. All that there. This is their boundaries pretty much. All around here. Then Moses told the Israelites, "This territory is the homeland you are to divide among yourselves by sacred lot. Yahuwah has instructed that the land be divided among the 9.5 remaining tribes. The families of the tribes of Reuben, Gad, and half the tribe of Manasseh have already received their grants of land on the east side of the Jordan River, across from Jericho towards the sunrise." We dealt with that last episode. Those 2.5 tribes wanted to live on the other side of the river, so no worries, mate. Leaders to divide the land. And Yahushua said to Moses, "Eleazar and Joshua are the men designated to divide the land grants among the people. Enlist one leader from each tribe to help them with the task. These are the tribes and the names of the leaders." Right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 9.5 actually. This one was a half. 9.5 tribes. They're the leaders there. These are the men I have appointed to divide the grants of land in Canaan among the Israelites. The land boundaries given to Moses and then later to Ezekiel is different than what was first described to Abraham, and there are many reasons for this. If we look at this map here, that's only a small portion of what was given to Abraham, the promise given to Abraham. It went way out and it went around here, it was further up towards Babylon a little bit more, and it went right down around Egypt as well, the land that was supposed to be Yisrael's land. So it was a much bigger area that was promised to Abraham. But here, he's only promised this area here. Very similarly, though slightly different, with Ezekiel as well. Why is that? There are many reasons for this. First, when Yahushua spoke to Abraham concerning his and his descendants' land inheritance, it was spoken of in very general terms. However, when Yahushua spoke to Moses concerning Israel's land inheritance, he gave very specific details. Another thing we have to take into consideration is all of the many changes that took place over time, like empire nations rising up and then dying out, and the many relocations of the tribes over time. Because of this, a variety of different people groups grew, shrank, or completely vanished altogether. This resulted in not only changing place names, but changed borders as well. That's one reason why. Now the towns for the Levites. While Israel was camped beside the Jordan on the plains of Moab across from Jericho, Yahushua said to Moses, "Instruct the people of Israel to give the Levites certain towns from their property to live in, along with the surrounding pasture lands." Because remember, they didn't inherit any land, the Levites. They were set apart. They weren't being divided up. But Yahushua's still saying they've got to live somewhere. They can't just be all camped around the temple or the tabernacle all the time. They've got to have some other land. So give them some spots. All of your tribes have to give them some property. Instruct the people of Israel to give the Levites certain towns from the property to live in, along with the surrounding pasture lands. These towns will be for the Levites to live in, and the surrounding lands will provide pasture for their cattle, flocks, and other livestock. The pasture land assigned to the Levites around these towns will extend 500 metres from the town walls in every direction. So measure off a kilometre outside the town walls in every direction, east, south, west, north, with the town at the centre. This area will serve as the larger pasture land for the towns. 6 of the towns you give the Levites will be cities of refuge where a person who has accidentally killed someone can flee for safety. In addition, give them 42 other towns. In all, 48 towns with the surrounding pasture land will be given to the Levites. These towns will come from the property of the people of Israel. The larger tribes will give more towns to the Levites, while the smaller tribes will give fewer. Each tribe will give property in proportion to the size of its land. So he's looking after the Levites here. Cities of refuge. Yahushua said to Moses, give the following instructions to the people of Israel. When you cross the Jordan into the land of Canaan, designate cities of refuge to which people can flee if they have killed someone accidentally. These cities will be places of protection from a dead person's relatives who want to avenge the death. Interesting. The slayer must not be put to death before being tried by the community. Designate 6 cities of refuge for yourselves, 3 on the east side of the Jordan River and 3 on the west in the land of Canaan. These cities are for the protection of Israelites, foreigners living among you, and travelling merchants. Anyone who accidentally kills someone may flee there for safety. Anyone who accidentally kills someone there may flee there for safety. It's like witness protection, where they cover your identity and hide you for a while until the trial. If you're going to testify against a big gangster and they're afraid that you're a witness and you're going to get killed, they put you into witness protection. Well, that's what these cities were for. Cities of refuge, so that until there was a trial or guilty verdict or innocent or guilty, you could be protected. But if someone strikes and kills another person with a piece of iron, it is murder, and the murderer must be executed. Or if someone with a stone in his hand strikes and kills another person, it is murder, and the murderer must be put to death. Or if someone strikes and kills another person with a wooden object, it is murder, and the murderer must be put to death. The victim's nearest relative is responsible for putting the murderer to death. When they meet, the avenger must put the murderer to death. So if someone hates another person and waits in ambush and pushes him or throws something at him and he dies, it is murder. Or if someone hates another person and hits him with a fist and he dies, it is murder. In such cases, the avenger must put the murderer to death when he meets them. But suppose someone pushes another person without having shown previous hostility, or throws something that unintentionally hits another person, or accidentally drops a huge stone on someone. Accidentally drops a huge stone on somebody. I guess that's a bit different in their lifestyle, isn't it? How could you accidentally drop a stone? Well, I guess if you're building things. Drop a huge stone on somebody accidentally, though they were not enemies, and the person dies. If this should happen, the community must follow these regulations in making a judgment between the slayer and the avenger, the victim's nearest relative. The community must protect the slayer from the avenger and must escort the slayer back to live in the city of refuge to which he fled. So this is mainly for accidental crimes, accidental murders, things like that, so that the person who's dead, so their family can't seek revenge until there's been a verdict. There he must remain until the death of the high priest who was anointed with the sacred oil. But if the slayer ever leaves the limits of the city of refuge and the avenger finds him outside the city and kills him, it will not be considered murder, because he left the place of safety, left the place of refuge. Stupid. The slayer should have stayed inside the city of refuge until the death of the high priest. But after the death of the high priest, the slayer may return to his own property. So if there's a changeover of the high priest, then they can go free without fear of being killed. After the death of the high priest, the slayer may return to his own property. These are the legal requirements for you to observe from generation to generation, wherever you may live. All murderers must be put to death, but only if evidence is presented by more than one witness. No one may be put to death on the testimony of only one witness. Also, you must never accept a ransom payment for the life of someone judged guilty of murder and subject to execution. Murderers must always be put to death. And never accept a ransom payment from someone who has fled to a city of refuge, allowing a slayer to return to his property before the death of the high priest. This will ensure that the land where you live will not be polluted, for murder pollutes the land. Interesting way to put it, isn't it? That's how Yahushua feels. This is a quote from Yahushua. This isn't Moses' interpretation or anything like that. This is straight from Yahushua. Murder pollutes the land. So what's this 21st century planet like? It's just polluted. Paralysed and polluted. Yeah? That's the state of the world. Paralysed and polluted. Because of not only murder, but all other disobedient behaviour and evil crimes. But murder pollutes the land. No sacrifice except the execution of the murderer can purify the land from murder. No sacrifice except the execution of the murderer can purify the land from murder. You must not defile the land where you live, for I live there myself. I am Yahuwah who lives among the people of Israel. So if you want me to live among you, don't pollute the land, because I'm set apart. I can't live in a polluted land. So you want me, this is how to do it. A total of 48 cities were to be given to the Levites, and these cities were to be the Levites' permanent possessions, and along with each city, a certain amount of land surrounding the city was also to be given. So the Levites would have a place to raise their farm animals. These were not cities the Israelites would build from scratch. Rather, after Israel had taken possession of the land, the cities would be handpicked from the many towns and small villages the Hebrew army would capture from the Canaanite tribes during battle. In many cases, though, what was given to the Levites was just an area with a handful of buildings and were not walled cities or anything remotely resembling what we would consider to be a city in our day. What's interesting about this instruction to Israel to set aside cities for the Levites is that it's one of the instructions that was never fully implemented. They didn't even do it. For to this day, all existing historical records we have access to indicate the Levites never actually received all 48 of the cities they were supposed to have received. Also, the Jubilee celebration, which was established to ensure that the original owner of a piece of land would, in the 50th year, always get his land, his real estate back, if he had lost it to debt or whatever, this was never truly obeyed either. Jubilee was never really properly done either. Records indicate that the implementation of the Jubilee year per Yahushua's instruction never occurred even once. What about this? They didn't even attempt to do it properly. This is the origin of the Jews, the Judaism that we see. So this is their origin. This is their people. It's our people too, because, the lost sheep have been scattered. But I'm just saying, this is the people we lift up and herald. They didn't even attempt to do half the instructions. Oh, but they've kept it written in a book and taken all the names out. So we should honour and respect. Oh, please. Didn't even try to do it. And concerning the cities to be given to the Levites, they may have been assigned certain towns and villages. But in terms of the Levites really moving into these areas, well, that was a different story. Because here's the thing. Not only was each Israelite tribe, based on its size, supposed to provide cities to the Levites to live in, but each tribe was also responsible for consistently caring for those Levites who were living in the cities in their assigned areas. And this is something that more often than not just didn't happen. Incidentally, the book of Joshua does identify some of these Levite cities by name, but only the big ones. The ugly reality we have to face, and this is so typical of fallen and greedy human nature, when it comes to anything connected with money and wealth, when it came time to actually implement these instructions of Yahushua, what probably happened is that the tribes gave the Levites burnt out villages, areas that were considered of little value to the tribe, that were barely fit for human habitation. And as a result of this, the Levites, who were given exceptionally crappy areas, simply didn't move in, and instead chose to join their brothers in the more substantial and well-fortified cities that were walled. And again, let's not forget the situation of the Promised Land when the Israelites first entered into it. Once Yisrael set foot inside the Promised Land, they would be forced to deal with a never-ending series of attacks from the Canaanites, wandering bandits, and even armies sent by the king who wanted to expand their territorial holdings. These hostile entities didn't make any distinction between the common Israelites, the Levites, and the priesthood. As far as they were concerned, a Israelite was an Israelite. They were all fair game for the edge of their swords. So even though they were instructed to give these Levites certain towns and land, they kept the letter of the instruction. Here you go, here's some land, but it was one of the burnt out crappy ones, and they'd moved on. There's no protection for them. So more often than not, as it said, they didn't even move. The Levites just went, stuff this, we're not living in that, can't live in that. Burnt out rubbish, we'll go and live with our brothers up in the bigger city. So you can see, when it comes to greed, we'll just do the very bare minimum so we can say, oh, well, we gave it to them. If they don't want to live in it, that's their problem. It's a burnt out city with no walls. If they don't want, that's their problem. We did what we were told to do. No, you didn't, because, shocking. Let's come to our last short part here. Women who inherit property. This is a kind of revision here, because remember the sisters that came up to Moses and said, our fathers died and we've got no brothers. Does that mean we don't get any land? This is all about them. Then the heads of the clans of Gilead, descendants of Machir, son of Manasseh, son of Joseph, came to Moses and the family leaders of Israel with a request. They said, Sir, Yahuwah instructed you to divide the land by special lots among the people of Israel. You were also told by Yahuwah to give the grants of land owned by our brother Zelophehad to his daughters. But if they marry men from another tribe, their grants of land will go with them to the tribe into which they marry. So in this way, the total area of our tribe land will be reduced. That makes sense? If these women marry outside people, even outside tribes within Israel, that's portions of their land that's leaving them, because the men are taking, outside tribes and men are taking over their land. So these guys aren't happy with that. Our tribal land will be reduced. Then when the year of Jubilee comes, their portion of land will be added to that of a new tribe, causing it to be lost forever to our ancestral tribe. So even at the year of Jubilee, it won't be returned to them. It'll go to them. So Moses gave the Israelites this instruction. Moses gave the Israelites this instruction from Yahushua. The claim of the men of the tribe of Joseph is legitimate. This is what Yahuwah instructs concerning the daughters of Zelophehad. Let them marry anyone they like, as long as it is within their own ancestral tribe. None of the territorial land may pass from tribe to tribe, for all the land given to each tribe must remain within the tribe to which it was first allotted. The daughters throughout the tribes of Israel who are in line to inherit property must marry within their tribe, so that all the Israelites will keep their ancestral property. No grant of land may pass from one tribe to another. Each tribe of Israel must keep its allotted portion of land. The daughters of Zelophehad did as Yahushua instructed Moses. Mahlah, Tirzah, Hoglah, Milcah, and Noah all married cousins on their father's side. They married into the clans of Manasseh, son of Joseph. Thus, their inheritance of land remained with their ancestral tribe. So these are the instructions and regulations that Yahushua gave to the people of Israel through Moses while they camped on the plains of Moab beside the Jordan River across from Jericho. These are the instructions while they were camped from there. So that is officially the end of Numbers, the book of Numbers. BAMIDBAR, which means in the wilderness. An important lesson we should all take away from here is that Yahushua's set apart real estate is extremely important to him. This was the last handful of chapters and videos we've done have been about real estate, about the land. So it's an important lesson we should take away is that Yahushua's real estate, set apart real estate, is extremely important to him. In fact, it's a key ingredient to his overall plan of deliverance for Israel. Just as the land of Canaan and its boundaries were specifically set aside for Israel, the boundaries of our human bodies belong to Yahushua, bought and paid with a price. He owns us, and we better surrender to him if we know what's good for us. As we go on, we'll see that there were times in Israel's history when they lost possession of the promised land due to their apostasy. When we let evil flow through us, not arresting our thoughts, not fighting the battle within, we lose ourselves, just like they lost their land. We lose our land, we lose ourselves. We become slaves to the enemy, and he does everything he can to stop us from connecting through the portal. That's what their land was for. The land, the tribal nations, and in the center was the temple. In the temple, all the furniture. In the temple was the ark. On the ark was the portal. On the portal was the interdimensional connection between Yahusha and his throne room. All right? In us, same thing. If they weren't obedient, they lost their land. We're not obedient, we lose ourselves. We lose our temple, our tabernacle. We lose connection. It's all about connection. So, when we let evil, we don't fight the battle, we lose ourselves, become slaves to the enemy. He does everything to stop us from connecting to the portal. Once 𝔹𝕖𝕙𝕒𝕚 entered their promised land, they even became negligent, following Yahusha's instructions. So even when they moved, like I said before, they didn't even try half the time. They became negligent in following Yahusha's instructions concerning taking possession of Canaan. For one, they failed to completely eliminate all the native Canaanites in the land, as Yahusha instructed. And as we know, time after time they played the whore with the pagan deities and idols of the Canaanites. So, I've heard lots of people say that we shouldn't be too harsh on 𝔹𝕖𝕙𝕒 because they were living in a different era to us. You know, we're the same. We shouldn't be too harsh on Adam and 𝗂𝗚. We shouldn't be too harsh on Moses and the Israelites and da-da-da. We shouldn't be too... Look at our lives and da-da-da. Yes, look at your life. Look at my life. Look at our lives and see what we've had to go through. Those of us who are still standing here. Those of us who haven't run away. Those of us who haven't just thrown in the towel. Look at how we've had to fight to stay here. Moses fought and he stayed in there. The consequences for certain behaviours he had was that he couldn't go into the promised land, but he was still loved, he was still forgiven. He just had, consequences for his behaviour. So look at Moses, look at Joshua and Caleb. They were allowed to go in. They were the only two from that older generation who were allowed to go in. So yeah, we can look at how you can look at the Israelites however you want. Let's not be too harsh on them. Yeah, be harsh. Just be real. Be truthful. You don't have to judge, but just look at them and go, look, what a bunch of deadheads. And we're lifting them up as the founding fathers of some religious movement on the earth. Orthodox Judaism and the Jews and all that sort of stuff that they go on with. Look at their founding fathers. All got killed in the wilderness, except two who led the nation of Israel into the promised land. And they didn't even try, half of them, to do that. That was the younger generations as well. So let's just look at things in perspective. Yeah, we can look at ourselves and, we look at what we go through. Yeah, but we win, don't we? We're still here, still going through it, still working towards the promised land, So we best believe that while we must travel this world to make a living and tarry on till he returns, Yahusha absolutely hates the sex-crazed, money-hungry power plays of this intoxicated, depraved world. It's abominable behaviour to him. And if we choose to entertain it in our set-apart vessels, his wrath and fury will be upon us until we choose to stop, surrender ourselves, and give over those bad habits, quirks, kinks, plans, and behaviours. Let him burn them up and be purified. That's the difference between us and 𝔹𝕖𝕙𝕒 in the wilderness. All of that was recorded for us as types and shadows and examples for us of what not to do. So let's not do it. Let's go on. Let's learn the lesson. Learn the lessons that Moses had to learn. Learn the lessons that Caleb and Joshua had to learn, and go on. Because we're coming in now in a week or so to our last book of Moses, which is Deuteronomy. And little bit of change in its feeling because it's actually Moses talking. It's not Yahusha talking directly to Moses. It's Moses revising and re-instructing Israel, saying, okay, you've heard that it was said. It's like Moses' grand opus on the mountain. It's like the Sermon on the Mount that Yahusha did. This is Moses' version of that, because he's saying he's not denying or abolishing or putting aside any of the instruction formally given. He's saying, you have heard that it was said this. Well, this is how we're going to implement that when we go into the land. Remember when we were told to do this at the Mount Sinai? Well, when we go into the land, you're going to take that and we're going to do it this way. So this is the instruction and this is the way you behave it. This is the instruction, this is the way you behave it. Exactly what Yahushua, the second mediator, said when he was standing on the mountain. You've heard that it was said this. Well, this is how I want you to behave that. I didn't come to abolish any of it. Not one word, not jot, not one jot, not one tittle. None of that. I didn't come to abolish anything, but to fulfill it. Fill it up. Transform it, make it real to us. They're not shadows anymore, it's reality. You've heard that it was said this is how you're going to behave it. You've heard that it was said that, this is how you're going to behave it. That's really exciting to me. I can't wait to dive into this last book of Moses because that's what we're all about in the behavior evolution. Summarizing stuff, looking at the text, looking at the context, listening to Yahushua, going to the point and saying, what's this all about? This is what it says, but how do we behave it today? We don't want to change the instruction, but we want to know how to behave that today so that it's real. So that it's not just a simple cultural instruction. Well, why did you give that instruction, Father? What was it for? And how do we please you in it? So, I love you guys. We're back soon. We're going to dive into season 5. See you later.